All right. Well, I'm Andrew Glitoris. I play lead guitar in the band. I also sing. Um, Glitoris is a four-piece political feminist protest kind of punk rock, pop, metal, art rock band. We're based in Ngunnawal and Canberra, and we have just released a single called Lickety Split, which is the first single to be taken from our forthcoming album. It's our sophomore album, self-titled, and that will be out on July the 14th. And we've just announced a national tour to go with it. So there you go.
Well, you've been quite busy, mate. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
No worries at all. So we'll start on the single first. So Glitterous
Sure, sure.
recently released a new single, Lickety Split. So how's
Yeah,
the reception been for it?
yeah, great. We've been really happy with it, particularly radio. Um, Community radio have loved it, but I mean, the single, we chose to lead the album with a single that was directly aimed to the community that we're from, rather than a sort of a mainstream music audience, if that makes sense. Like the band is emerged from I guess what's safe to say is a kind of a fringe and queer community. We've always had a very strong LGBTQI plus following. The song is about celebrating sex positivity, queer sex positivity. It's about celebrating sex workers and the work that they do. We feature a lot of our friends and our community in the video, which I think has been quite racy for some. And it's funny because you don't really realize like how conservative a lot of music or a lot of like popular culture is until you do something like this, and then you release it, and it's like obviously our community, they love it, they've gone off and think it's great, but like we've had some eyebrows raised in other areas, and it's like, wow, we really are in a very conservative time. If people get a bit hot under the collar at the sight of a pole dancer, it's like, bloody hell, okay.
Much, isn't it?
And it really isn't. Like there's no nudity in the video. Like it's we're just commentating on our community, and we're celebrating them, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So tell us a bit more about Lickety Split from a musical point of view then, and what you're going.
Yeah. Yeah, what were we going for? That is a really good question. Well, I mean, Glitterous has always been about genre bending and drawing influences from a very broad range of music kind of genres. So, obviously, like we're big rock fans, but we're also huge pop fans. We're big hip hop fans, but we're also big fans of musicals and theatre and bits of opera, particularly like contemporary opera. So I mean, like the fundamental sort of rhythm of it is really kind of, it rolls along with Mickey and Malcolm on drums and bass, and then like the underpinning instrument is actually a cabeza, and we were really influenced by Salt and Pepper's Push It, and if you listen to that song, it's like the whole thing is driven by a cabeza, like a hand percussion. And it's got loads of 808 in it. And so we thought, like, yeah, we want to do something like that. We want to do something that's really kind of like captures positive sexuality, but drives it along with cabeza and chuck the 808 in it, and, chuck a load of like rock riffs in it. So like the main riff that I play is based on a maqam. It's like an Arabic scale. And then like there's a load of Broadway in it too. So it's pretty out there, probably too out there, I think, for the mainstream music industry. Oh my god. But yeah, that's what it's about musically. Yeah, it chops and changes. There's a lot of starts and stops.
You actually raised a really good point there. Like you mentioned capturing positive sexuality
Yeah.
through the instruments. Like how hard is that to do with the use of instruments to sort of capture that and create that mood?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's about being at one with your instrument, and we're all very, as individual musicians, we're very attached to our instruments, and we all work very hard just on our own individual performances, and we all want to kind of shine. And so we've all got our little spots on this song and on the record. So it's about being like really comfortable with what you're getting across. But I think there are certain rhythms in it, like certainly the way that Malcolm brings a huge amount of sexuality to the band, because bass is just so driving the whole way through, and you know, Mickey's like rumbling away on the toms, and then the cabeza is sort of like really offsets that with like this triplet pattern, which is exactly what was in Salt and Pepper, and it sort of like kind of shuffles it along. And then like there's lots of there's guitar in it, but it's not like the sort of standard guitar that, you know, it's not like a 3-chord song at all. It's like some pretty funny and unusual kind of riffs, and then there's lots of like massive sort of octave slides that sort of like almost cut through the whole song, you know, in places. So yeah, it's an interesting one, but I think, you know, getting it across musically, getting sexuality across musically, and I think another way that we do that is that, you know, the instruments that we play and the kind of music that we play is, you know, it's masculine. It, like rock music is inherently masculine, it's implicitly masculine. And I think by embracing that and doing it to a level that we're comfortable with and happy with, and really embracing that, I think that also gets across the sort of sexuality side of it musically as well.
And Lickety Split is your first single in 3 years. So
I know, yeah.
What's changed with the band in that time? Like what's happened in the Glitoris camp in those 3 years?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, obviously 2020 we released just over 3 years ago we released Slut Power, which was the final song off The Policy. We had a 17-date national tour booked, which all went to hell because of COVID. And then we did in 2020, I mean, it was really difficult to do anything and to know what to do. And, you know, a lot of musicians were like, what the hell's going on? And how are we going to get through this? And no one knew what they were doing. People kept rescheduling their tours, but we were looking at this going like, okay, well, we could reschedule it all, but, you know, then we might have to just reschedule it again. It was just so unpredictable. And we were really fortunate because we were in Ngunnawal, Canberra. We dodged a lot of the really heavy lockdowns that you know, Nam and Gadigal had. And so that meant that we could still rehearse a bit. We played a couple of socially distanced shows, which was quite interesting, in the June of that year. And then we released a live mini album like later in the year, and that was good. That really compensated for the fact that we lost our tour. We lost the chance to really, you know, send off The Policy, you know. And then at the end of that year, Scott was living interstate, our drummer, in Victoria, and didn't want to be in a band anymore, so that was fine. So we said goodbye to Scott, and then we got Mickey in early 2021, and she's also based in Canberra too, so that made it a hell of a lot easier. And then we thought, well, screw it, it's still very difficult to tour. There's the odd shows going on, but I also felt that, you know, the priority in the pandemic was to get sport up and running, and music, and the hostility towards music and musicians and live music in particular was just appalling. The way the arts was just hung out to dry, you know, on all levels. It wasn't just like, you know, our kind of bands. It was musicians, it was artists, it was exhibitions, it was like it was creative arts wide. Everyone was hung out to dry. People lost a ton of money. We saw a lot of people like sink into terrible mental health issues because of it. It was just a really, really torrid time. And we just thought, well, we can't do anything, so let's just write. And that's all we did. So we wrote the record, and then we recorded it last year. So it's taken us a long time. It's also, you know, nowadays not at all possible. Even if you're in a really established band, it's not at all possible to make a living out of music anymore. So you've got to work full time to pay the bills. And with the four of us working full time, you know, Glitoris becomes a very sort of, it's a high intensity sort of part-time job, but yeah, so we put as much time as we could into it, but you know, the proof of it is in the result, and we've got an album that we're really, really proud of. So it worked out in the end.
Very good. And speaking of the album, like Lickety Split is taken from your self-titled sophomore album, which is due out on July the 14th. So is that song a good sonic representation of what to expect?
It's one sonic representation of what to expect. I can tell you that record is just, it's funny because one of our team said to us when they first heard it that it sounds like a different band every song.
Wow.
And it is. You know, so there's a couple of like punk type songs on there that you would expect from us. There's a couple of absolutely epic kind of rock operas. I won't say too much about that because it will spoil the surprise. Then obviously there's Lickety, and then we've got like, you know, we've got like a very funky kind of number that's all about ministerial unaccountability. We've got a song about intimate partner violence and femicide, which is very kind of straight up sort of Rage Against the Machine sounding track, you know, and then we've got something that sounds like it's out of a 60s B movie, you know. It's about cheating on a Netflix series with your partner, agreeing that you'll watch something on Netflix and then they watch it in secret without you. Like, how dare they? That's actually based on true events, that song.
I can imagine.
It's a good job you're talking to me about it and not Kevin, because I tell you, she'd lose it. Like it all happened to her.
I'll remember that in the future. And we sort of touched on this a bit before, but your sound mixes everything from punk to metal to rock. There's pop harmonies in there. You mix a lot of different music in there. So how difficult is it for you to find the balance in all those genres when you're writing music?
That's a good question. Do you know what? It's something that just comes naturally to this band. We're all sort of anchored at certain points, and our anchors are those kind of like really big kind of political bands like System of a Down and Rage Against the Machine and bands like that, where there's like big like political sorry, that's my doorbell. I'll just ignore it. So yeah, I mean, so we're anchored by these sort of political setting and like genre bending bands like Mr. Bungle and stuff like that, but we're also like really we see eye to eye on a lot of like big sounding jazz records, like particularly Nina Simone, Billie Holiday. Kevin and I are just kind of bound by Madonna and like, you know, big sounding pop songs, particularly by female artists. So there are certain sort of touchstones where we're all kind of like on the same page. And then there's our own individual musical influences. But we've always sort of thought, and particularly with this record, that there's just room for everything. Like there's room for the Broadway stuff. There's room for operatic elements. There's room for, you know, we got string sections on 2 tracks, which just sound awesome. There's room for sort of orchestral stuff. There's room for straight up punk. There's room for like proggy stuff in weird time signatures. So yeah, we're just so sort of overwhelmed with the mass of music that we love, like the sheer quantity of it that we just feel that there's room for everything in what we do. And also we're not interested in one-dimensional music or you know, like doing the same thing over and over and over again. There's a hell of a lot of like genre bands and we ain't one of them.
Bless your cotton socks.
Thank you.
And Glitoris have announced yourselves a tour very recently as well. So can you give us some more information on that?
Yeah, wow. Well, it's our biggest national tour to date. we, as I mentioned, like in 2020, we had booked our biggest tour to date then, and then it all sort of fell apart with COVID and everything. And so we wanted to do something similar for this album and just do the record justice, like do right by it. Like we spent a couple of years writing and recording it and doing this. It was so epic, like the amount of time and work that went into it, particularly the writing of it, because we threw the kitchen sink at it, I tell you. And so we were like, well, it's got to have a tour that sort of suits that. So yeah, we're doing about 17, maybe 18 shows, I think. We start off in the Northern Territory, in Garramilla, Larrakia, and Darwin Railway Club in July, and then we go to Mbamwe, Arendi, Alice Springs the next night, and then we go WA, you know, up to Queensland, up to Meanjin. We go in Gold Coast, we going everywhere, and then we do a run in Victoria, run in New South Wales, run in Tasmania.
Wow.
Yeah, in Lituita was so. We just played a show in Hobart in Nipaluna with Regurgitator, and it was so good. They just go off down there. It's unreal.
That's awesome. And where can people find out more information about the tour and buy tickets?
Yeah, go to our socials. It's all there. It's all on our socials. So just go to Insta, go to Facebook, and all the info's there. You can also go to the venue sites. We'll be I think our Facebook posts, our Facebook event pages, for all the tickets and everything, go live like in the next day or so. By the time this show goes to air, it will be up and running, I'm sure.
Beautiful. All right, Sam. Well, thanks very much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. Good luck with the album and the tour, and I might pop along to the Brisbane show and say hello.
That'd be great. Be good to see you, Kris. Thank you so much for having me. And can I just say thank you so much for asking so much detail about the music, because it's actually quite rare. You'll be surprised.